Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Soul Drop, and this is my initial comparison between the original Zoom GT Jump and the Zoom GT Jump 2. So as far as the pricing goes, they did not increase the price, thankfully. I mean, they're increasing the price for a lot of shoes, like the Lukas increased by like what, 30 bucks or 20 bucks? And then the Zoom Freak, I think the Zoom Freak they did not. But there was another shoe that they increased the price, which made me kind of sad. But they didn't increase the price for this shoe, right? So if you guys do want to cop either of these shoes, I try to leave the link in the description box. This shoe is on sale, however, for 150 bucks because it is an older shoe. But this colorway and another black and white colorway for the two is available. So again, links will be in the description box. And Jokic, the Joker, was playing this shoe like pretty much the entire year, right? He was wearing this shoe, and also when the 2 came out, he was wearing this shoe as well. So yeah, let's go over the differences so far, and of course, let's get it started off with the tracciones. As far as the traction pattern goes, so the original one we have pretty much herringbone. And also for the 2, we have herringbone as well, or that's what they're saying it is. It's a multi-directional herringbone traction pattern on the tech specs, right? But as far as the like overall traction performance goes, the Zoom GT Jump, like the original one, was pretty good, right? It wasn't amazing, but like it's made for bigger dudes, and they don't really need as much traction, you know what I mean, or crazy good stops. So I guess that wasn't a huge deal, but also it didn't have any squeak at all, right? Which I don't like, you know what I mean? But the two also seems like the same, right? It seems like it has a pretty good bite, but there is no squeak. But also, it seems like it stops a little bit better than the originals, which is kind of weird, which I do like, of course, because traction is always welcome. Good traction is always something that I want, and I feel like good traction is always something that everyone wants, all right? As far as the durability, however, the durability here in the originals seem a little bit better. The rubber is actually a little bit harder, although it doesn't seem like it has as many. I guess like it's around the same as far as the surface area goes, but the 2 actually, the rubber is a little bit thinner, it feels like, and it moves a little bit easier when I try to move it with my fingers. So yeah, I feel like the 2 will not be as good on outdoor court. But yeah, it seems very similar as far as the traction goes, like for the overall stop on my wood floors. Obviously, I played in the originals. So yeah, not that much difference besides, I guess, the worst durability for the 2. And now moving on to the heel to toe transition, also pretty similar. However, the 2 seems a little bit smoother in the heel, right? So in the originals, we had a crazy jump frame. I believe they were calling this like a jump frame or something, but it's a very, very thick plastic, right? Look at this. And it doesn't really compress all that much, so it's a little clunky in the heel. However, there is a nice curved shape. But in the 2s, obviously we still have plastic, but this React is super freaking soft, so it's actually very smooth in the heel, it feels like, and we have this crazy rounded shape. But here in the forefoot, we have a crazy curve shape here in the 2. The 1, not as much actually, which is kind of weird. Look at that, not as much curve. So I do like the 2, just because, just in my personal opinion, I like to be on my toes a lot when I'm shooting, and it just feels a lot more comfortable for me with this type of shape. But also, as far as the curve goes, there's a little bit, just a tiny bit of flex in the forefoot for the 2. But the originals, I would say it's around the same, right? So they're both pretty stiff. But the 2 for overall heel to toe transition right now does feel a little bit smoother. Especially with the exaggerated curve shape in the forefoot and softer heel for the cushion, right? Now moving on to the cushioning setup. So crazy, I mean, they're both similar cushioning setups, but it does feel a little bit different, right? So the similarities, of course, are the zoom units in the forefoot, right? So we have 2 pods actually in the 2 right here. It does seem like it is a little bit thicker, I guess, right? A little bit chonkier. And then in the originals, we also had a zoom unit, but it's not separated. It's not 2 pods, it's actually just 1. But they also have full-length zoom strobel units, right? So in the originals and then in the 2 as well, right? They also both have really crappy insoles. They have the styrofoam insoles that I usually don't like, but it doesn't really matter because you have full-length zoom strobel right underneath your foot, right? So of course, for step-in comfort and underfoot cushioning, the zoom unit feels, there's a lot of compression, there's a lot of bounce, right? It just feels like the 2, however, has a little bit more like PSI. I don't know why. Maybe it's because the original Zoom GT Jump is older and I've played it in a good amount. So maybe that's why it doesn't feel as bouncy, but the 2 feels like there's a little bit more pep in the step. Yeah, you know what I mean? It feels like there's a little bit more rebound back, a little bit more compression, and a little bit more bounce. So might be placebo or something, but that's what it feels like to me right now. But of course, the biggest difference is the heel cushion, right? So this React is super freaking soft. They're giving us actual React, you know what I mean? It's not a carrier or anything like that. So it's super soft, and it has a nice rebound back, you know what I mean? So that, of course, is like not right underneath the foot because you have that Zoom Strobel unit underneath the foot. So you feel the Zoom Strobel unit, right? And that feels bouncy, but also you feel that springiness from the React, which feels really, really nice. Here in the originals, you also feel that Zoom unit, but it's not as easy to feel because it's caged, you know what I mean? So in my personal opinion, I think the 2 feels a lot better with this React setup. But also the 2 feels higher up off the ground. I was actually kind of surprised. The Zoom GT Jump, the original one, has like a little bit worse than average court feel, but then the 2 is pretty damn high up off the ground. Like it feels pretty similar to the old school LeBrons, like the LeBron 15, LeBron 16, you know, with the crazy Zoom units. So yeah, I mean, I guess if you want a little bit better court feel, then go with the originals, right? But if you don't really care about that, just because the 2 isn't that much higher up off the ground, it's not like crazy difference. It's just it definitely does feel higher up off the ground. But obviously the React here in the heel does feel better for me right now. I haven't played in the 2s, it's just right now it feels better. And if you want that, then obviously go with the 2. But of course you have that full length Zoom Strobel unit in both of the shoes, so that feels very similar. All right, moving on to the materials. I mean, they're both very similar as well in feel, right? So the original Zoom GT Jump, like this material is really, really thin too, conforms to your foot very well, and you even have Leno weave, right? So in the 2, it also kind of reminds me of Leno weave, but it feels more cloth-like comparing it to like the Jordan 36. And it's just the 2 also is really, really thin. It conforms to your foot very well. I mean, it's very supportive. It doesn't really stretch at all. So that feels very similar, especially here in the forefoot and also in the midfoot, because they're both very minimal uppers, right? And then for the tongue, they both have very minimal feeling tongues. There's no padding really at all in both of the tongues. They're both half booty construction tongues as well. And then in the ankle area, they both have very minimal padding too. Not a lot actually, you know? So the upper is actually something that feels very, very similar. It's just, you know, they're using different materials and stuff like that. It looks different, I guess, but overall feel, it feels very similar. It's just the only thing that feels a little bit different is the original one. It kind of comes up on the ankle a little bit higher, I get, right? Or no, yeah, I guess, you know, starting from the back and then also in the middle right here, this kind of dips in for the 2, right? The 2 kind of goes straight up. So I can feel a little bit more kind of restriction in the originals. So I guess if you want a little bit more ankle support, then the original is better, but also the 2 feels pretty good, right? And now moving on to the fit, I went up half a size for both of these shoes and they both fit me pretty damn well, right? And they're actually very, very similar in fit. So here in the toe box, they're both really, really snug. Width-wise, they're both freaking narrow, right? I would say the 2 feels a little bit more narrow. It's squeezing like my pinky toe a little bit more, but the original also did that as well. So if you want a snug fit, like a really snug fit, I would suggest going true to size. But for most people, if you still want a pretty snug fit, I would suggest going up half a size, right? And if you have a wide foot or you want a roomy fit, I would suggest going up a full size. But for me, I went up half a size for both of these shoes and they both fit me well. Although there is a tiny bit of length, that's okay with me, just because it's still really snug in the toe box and width-wise, right? Now moving on to the support and lockdown. I mean, obviously I had no problems with the Zoom GT Jump, like the original one. Yeah, like for lateral containment, you have this is like a plastic piece actually here in the forefoot, acting as a sidewall, and then we have the foam coming up a good amount. We have this plastic jump frame. We have an internal TPU heel counter. So lateral containment was very good for me. In the Zoom GT Jump 2, it doesn't feel like it has as much for lateral support, right? But you know, we have a little bit going on as far as the foam in the forefoot, and then we have this kind of strap a little bit, but doesn't really do that much, I feel like, right? So I feel like the original feels like it's gonna be a little bit better, but the 2, I haven't played in it. And then here in the heel, we have a crazy internal TPU heel counter. So yeah, I mean, right now, the original feels a little bit more supportive. And then for lateral stability, ooh, the 2 is actually a little bit, ooh, yeah, look at that. The 2 looks like it's actually a good amount wider. Look at that. What is that, like 5 to 8 millimeters wider? I'm guessing, right? But definitely is wider. I mean, this outrigger in the 2 is pretty crazy. So there's that, and obviously the ankle support, like I talked about. And now moving on to the weight. I'm actually pretty curious. I feel like the 2 feels a little bit heavier, maybe. Yeah, so 15 ounces for the original, and then the 2 is 14 ounces, right? So it's an ounce lighter for the 2, which is kind of crazy. Actually probably has something to do with the jump frame. The jump frame, the plastic is actually pretty hefty, pretty thick, pretty stiff. It's a hard plastic as well. Here in the 2, obviously you still kind of have that, but the plastic is a lot thinner and it doesn't feel like it does as much. And also we have the React, and React foam is actually quite light. So yeah, it does feel lighter. The 2 does feel lighter, but as far as the overall feel, like the upper, they both feel pretty minimal for the upper, right? So there's that. Moving on to the aesthetics. I think I like the original better. The original definitely looks pretty good. There's some dope colorways as well. The 2 looks pretty good. It's just I don't like the upper. Like I don't like this pattern on the upper. So I don't think that looks as good. So tell us what you guys think of the aesthetics down in the comment section below. So wrapping things up, I feel like I like the 2 a little bit better. So they both feel very similar on foot, right? When I have it on, but the 2 feels like it made some little subtle improvements, just in my personal opinion, right? With the curvier forefoot, with the heel React, right? The traction feels a little bit better as well, and then the overall upper does feel very similar too. So it's just like little tiny upgrades, you know, little tiny improvements, which of course they're both the same price, but in my personal opinion, in this initial comparison, I do like the 2 just a tiny bit better, but of course the original Zoom GT Jump was still pretty damn nice, right? So anyways, that about concludes this video. Hope this video helped you guys out, and again, if you guys do want to cop either of these shoes, I'll try to leave the affiliate link in the description box. But that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.